guys, the best way to preview that new clip for you is we go into episode 84. Because you know what? The Biden show never, ever stops. As we continue to count down the days till we are restored from this horrible, horrible place. So we bring to you the thief in chief. The thief in chief. Yeah, all right, buddy. We were a little off sync today, but it's all right. We have with us the poster child of the Biden regime, not actually with us, just here in spirit, Dr. Rachel Levine, and we have a lot of items under his category, and I highlight the word his. Also, remember, you can see all of our shows on our YouTube channel, Danny Thompson, as we break into this commercial for this commercial message, and also on our Rumble channel, DANWT. As we forgot to do it, we do have our theme, our song for the good doctor today. And so, excuse me, we highlight the his, the pronoun, for something that's coming up a bit later in this segment, as we have some news that the good doctor will smile about as he is right now. Global citizenry. After a devastating year, queer activists will unite in Copenhagen to speak out and build bridges. Not literal Joe Biden infrastructure, but, thoughts and stuff like that between the cultures, between the great divide of them and the rest of us, I guess. Anyway. As the world continues to recover from the trauma of 2020 and pride flags begin to unfurl across gayborhoods, not neighborhoods, but gayborhoods, foreign and domestic, all eyes are on Copenhagen, Denmark, and Malmö, Sweden. Both cities will host World Pride. Copenhagen will also host Euro Games, an LGBTQ plus sporting, they forgot the I, sporting event that draws thousands of open-minded, free-spirited athletes and fans every year. However, this year's World Pride is particularly meaningful. For the first time, World Pride will use its platform to raise awareness of injustices across the globe, particularly as it pertains to equality, queer migrants, transgender rights, and the discrimination. While there have been similar forums at past World Pride events in New York, Madrid, and Toronto, it's never been integrated within the general program as it is this year. The Human Rights Conference, a 3-day event from August 17 to 19 in Copenhagen and broadcast virtually, aims to be the most significant LGBTQI, we'll add the I plus conference this year, featuring who? Here we go. Featuring African-born activist and journalist Almira Issa as host. In partnership with the United Nations, the event will have speeches, panels, and breakout sessions with dignitaries to discuss the problems LGBTQI plus people face around the world, and most importantly, what we can do to solve these issues. And so I would be surprised, not intersectional I, because I'm not any of those letters. Okay. Wouldn't be surprised if the good doctor went and was one of the dignitaries. Wouldn't that would be exciting for him, I would think. All right, we have champions of pride. You know, we're moving June, Pride Month, right? There are amazing LGBTQ. I have to keep adding the I, but I'm going to do it because I'm an aware person. LGBTQI plus people, improving visibility and fighting for the rights of our community in every state across the country, even though they don't get national attention to address the inequality. The Advocate, a publication based about the LGBTQI plus community. To address the inequity, the Advocate profiles LGBTQI plus advocates, activists, artists, politicians, and everyday people who are making a difference for the rest of us. Meet our 100+ champions of pride. And no, we're not going to go through the whole group. I did not look to see if he's there. I will have to go back and look. I'm just trying to make the good doctor happy before we have to make him sad. This will make him happy but sad. Singapore warns U.S. Embassy over webinar with LGBT group. Obviously, they don't have the Q or the I represented or the plus. Now, mainly bringing this up because the Biden regime is starting to interfere in a lot of governments and their policies. And it's going to start coming back on us, ladies and gentlemen. They're doing it down in Mexico, they're in Israel, and all kinds of places. This is participants of Pink Dot, an annual event organized in support of the LGBT community in Hong Kong, Singapore, where they're not allowed to do that in Singapore. But anyway, where is the story? Here it is. Yeah, it's in Hong Ling Park in Singapore. Yeah, that's from 2019 as they're there. And Singapore, socially conservative Singapore, on Wednesday said it noted with regret that the U.S. Embassy in the city had co-hosted a webinar with a local LGBT support group earlier in the week. Well, when would that have been? Could it have been that special day that made Dr. Rachel Levin so happy? Excuse me. Multi-ethnic Singapore has strict laws regulating public assembly. Foreigners are prohibited from participating in events dealing with a political cause. Wouldn't that be nice if we could do that? Ministry of Foreign Affairs has reminded the U.S. Embassy that foreign missions here are not to interfere in our domestic, social, and political matters, including issues such as how sexual orientation should be dealt with in public policy, it said in a statement. These are choices for only Singaporeans to debate and decide. And who can argue with that? Why is that our place? Except we are the United States. We get to push our way in wherever. When Trump does it, we're bullies. When they do it on things they believe in. Ministry of, excuse me. The May 17th webinar marked the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia and focused on the economic advantages of LGBTQI, now they put it in, plus equality and inclusion around the world, and the U.S. Embassy in Singapore said. And it's not our place, ladies and gentlemen. It's just not our place. LGBTQI refers to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, and or queer and intersex. They've recently added the questioning. The U.S. Embassy regularly works with civil society partners on a vital range of issues to build awareness and advance the human rights of all persons, it added. The event was co-hosted with support group Uga Chaga, which now I wish I had. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Uga Chaga, Uga Chaga, Uga Chaga. I'm hooked on a feeling. I missed that one. I apologize. That was, just slapped me in the face. Under Singapore law, sex between men is punishable by up to 2 years in jail, though prosecutions are rare. Previous attempts to overturn the colonial era law have failed. Uga Chaga's executive director, Lo Yang Fa, said the organization notes with surprise the Singapore government statement. Well, most governments do not like other countries messing with them. Lowe said none of the speakers in the invitation-only webinar discussed how sexual orientation should be dealt with in public policy. Well, I guess they still didn't like it. So there. Quit messing with Singapore. Now this is sad. I mean, no humor here. Excuse me. It's very humid here in Amarillo, which is unusual. And this also coincides with a study I had. I just never had a place to use it and had the time. Young people in general have become more suicidal in our country. The pandemic didn't help, but it was going on before the pandemic. And as this headline says, terrible time for trans youth. New survey spotlights suicide attempts and hope. And this is just horribly sad. And you don't want this. And that's from a demonstration back on March 3rd, if I can get my program to work. And that's not it. Let's see, did we not? Oh, here it is. Okay, skipped over it all. Sorry about that. The numbers are stark, worrisome, and should set off alarm bells. 59% of all transgender and non-binary young people in the U.S. seriously contemplated killing themselves in 2020. More than half thought it would be better to be dead rather than trying to live with rejection, isolation, loneliness, bullying, and being targeted by politicians and activists pushing anti-trans legislation. Those are among the findings in Trevor Project's third annual national survey on LGBTQ youth mental health, released Wednesday. But along with those grim statistics, it also concludes that America's lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and queer young people have still found joy even at their lowest moments, even amid the identity-crushing pandemic, which also added to their pain. And that is a lengthy study, if you want to look it up, by the Trevor group, and it's very sad. But we're not helping them. How are we not helping them? By these laws and everything? No, we are not helping them, ladies and gentlemen, by promoting this lifestyle and telling them you are something that you're not. How does that help people? You know, you can walk around all day and talk about my beautiful locks of hair. I know they're not there. All right? I can buy a toupee and put on it, and I know underneath I'm losing it, okay? It doesn't change me. It changed your perception of me, maybe, if you couldn't tell I was wearing a toupee. But it doesn't change who I am. We are asking, especially young people who haven't figured out life. I mean, if you're under 30, you won't agree with me, but who of you that is over 30 knows someone, how many people do you know under 30 that figured out life? They think they have. So how many people under 20 have figured out life? No, we're adding to this. We're hurting them because we glorify it. As President Biden says, no, you're heroes. You're asking people who are so hurt, so confused in life, they develop the ultimate fantasy to be able to handle their lives, pretending they're something they're not. And that's just transgender. You get into a lot of gay young people. They've been heavily pressured by society. A lot of times they're not accepted. They are rejected, so they choose different avenues of expression, hoping to be wanted. Some of them have been molested and caused to be that way. And yet we can, oh no, this is who you are. It's not always who they are. It's how they're coping. It's how they're escaping. And we're not helping them by glorifying it all and saying how proud we are of them. You don't help them either by beating them up or picking on them. Well, why do you pick on Dr. Rachel Levine? Because he wants to keep doing this to people. He wants this to happen because it validates his existence and his fantasy. And that's why we showcase him, and also because the Biden regime says he's a she and he is not a she. And he plays along and gets upset if you don't talk to him correctly and respect him in the right way. Well, respect yourself, Dr. Rachel Levine, and do something for all of these young people that you think you're championing, that you're hurting. Cut your hair, put on a man's suit, and be what you are, and tell them this is true life and we can help you through it. We can't do it the other way. Maybe I don't understand, but I guarantee you that's more understanding you're going to hear in that short take than you're going to get through most mainstream media, if not all. This will make Dr. Levine sad, although in a less horrifying way. NCAA allows games in states with anti-trans laws, even though they said they wouldn't. They're doing it. Too late to focus or whatever. Now this, I'm sorry, I can't treat this with respect. This is part of the problem, ladies and gentlemen, not only from the person that the article is about, Demi Lovato, who is a singer. I have heard the name. I know that she has had all kinds of problems. Okay? But this is ridiculous. I'm sorry. This is just, and this makes him smile because he's happy. But again, this is what's wrong with one of the many things. And this, to me, this encapsulates what is wrong with our world. We live in this nonsense. And so how can you deal with real issues when you're dealing with this and it makes major news? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a world that is crumbling around us, and we're taking hammers and hitting the crumbling bricks with this nonsense. It doesn't help. Demi Lovato announces now they, you have to listen, it's not more than one of them, not announcing there's many personalities living inside like schizophrenics. No, it's just stupid. Demi Lovato announces they are non-binary and changing their programs. That she is neither male nor female and doesn't fit into he, she, him, or her. Only fits in they. They. Now the reporter should have reached across and slapped the woman. Say, come to your senses. But no, they just go along with it. And that's what's wrong. We just keep going along with it, and it's hurting our youth. It's hurting our nation. It's hurting the world. It's hurting our foreign relations. I know, Danny, you get too worked up. This isn't that big of a deal. Yes, it is. Singer Demi Lovato has announced that they are non-binary and changing their pronouns to they, them. They, said the revelation, followed a lot of healing and self-reflective work. Well, obviously, you weren't self-reflecting in a mirror. In a Twitter video early Wednesday morning introducing their new podcast, the singer says they don't identify as male or female. I want to take this moment to share something very personal with you, they said. Over the past year and a half, I've been doing some healing and self-reflective work. And through this work, I've had the revelation that I identify as non-binary. You identify as a Fruit Loop and need help. I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but that's not helping you. Lovato said they are officially changing their pronouns to they, them, adding that the label non-binary best represents the fluidity I feel in my gender expression and allows me to feel most authentic and true to the person I both know I am and am still discovering. On their podcast, Lovato said that it would mean the world if people used their correct pronouns, but they will be accepting if people accidentally use she, her pronouns and just want them to be, they just want them to be making the effort. Lovato said that they are still learning and coming into myself and doesn't claim to be an expert or spokesperson for the community. Well, glad they understand that. And why aren't you? Oh, I see. Okay. So, but this brings up our, well, I don't know. A lot of my videos no longer want to work.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you, sir?
Yeah, she doesn't even know what they're talking about. I'll tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you. And I know there's some of you think this is just a sideshow. No, it's not. No, it's not. This is part of them wanting to destroy us. And if you don't see that, then you're missing everything they're doing. It's not just the money. It's not just the taxes. It's not just they want to destroy our very sense of being. And they're doing it with the help of all these people, including secular Democrats of America. Yes, I point them out every show because they're evil and they're running the show. Whoever's behind them, find out seculardemocrats.org. Oh, they won't like this, though, and this will be challenged in court. Texas governor signs law banning abortions as early as 6 weeks. We already have a law that bans abortion, I think, after 20 weeks, so the article will tell you as well. Texas became the largest state Wednesday with a law that bans abortions before many women even know they are pregnant, but with a unique provision that essentially leaves enforcement to private citizens through lawsuits against doctors or anyone who helps a woman get an abortion. I don't understand this law. I'm from Texas. I don't understand it at all. It's really kind of nuts. I don't know. The law signed by Republican Governor Greg Abbott puts Texas in line with more than a dozen other states that bans abortions after the detection of a fetal heartbeat, which seems logical. As early as 6 weeks, federal courts have mostly blocked the measures from taking effect. But with the Supreme Court this week agreeing to take up a Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy, abortion rights activists worried that a ruling favorable to the state could lay the groundwork for allowing even more abortion restrictions, including so-called heartbeat bills. And, hey, the heart's beating. Texas version is unique in that it prohibits state officials from enforcing the ban. Again, I don't understand this. Instead, it allows anyone, even someone outside of Texas, to sue an abortion provider or anyone else who may have helped someone get an abortion after the limit and seek financial damages of up to $10,000 per defendant. Critics say that provision would allow abortion opponents to flood the courts with lawsuits to harass doctors, patients, nurses, domestic violence counselors, a friend who drove a woman to a clinic, or even a parent who paid for the procedure. And they would all be guilty of being part of it, I guess. Texas law currently bans abortion after 20 weeks, with exceptions for a woman with a life-threatening medical condition, which is just there because doctors will tell you never happens, where you have to take the child. or if the fetus has a severe abnormality. Not Down syndrome, but a severe one. More than 90% of abortions take place in the first 13 weeks of a woman's pregnancy, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The Supreme Court will probably hear the Mississippi case in the fall, with the decision likely in spring 2022. So a lot happening on that front, but go Texas, doing something. This is just, we never know where to put it. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot will grant interviews only to black or brown journalists. Yeah. A major local anchor said that she can't get an interview, and other white anchors and reporters have said the same thing. They all concur, and the mayor has just said, I look around me and most of the reporters are white, and it should be different in our city. And so my thought is pretty simple. What did all you white people think was going to happen? You jumped on their bandwagon to say we're horrible and we're keeping people from getting ahead, and now they're blocking you. What did you think? And white politicians, do you think one day you're not going to have to step down? And the way most of you are doing it, maybe you should. I mean, people, and again, it's not, so you think white? I think nothing. But we exist. We're here. We're the majority color in this nation still. There's going to be some of us around. What's going on? But the same white reporters that, told us how horrible we are, now they're finding out, wait a minute, that's not fair. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, this will just bring a happy thought to your day. Third in line for the presidency. Pelosi calls for, I know, ruined everything, didn't it? Pelosi calls for diplomatic boycott of 2022 China Olympics on human rights grounds. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Tuesday called for a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing in response to China's human rights record. Pelosi blasted corporate sponsors of the game who looked the other way on China's abuses out of concern for their bottom line. Activists and lawmakers of both parties have called on President Joe Biden to bow out of the 2022 Olympics in protest. Something Ronald Reagan said back after Carter had boycotted Olympics, said that only punishes our athletes, and many of them missed their one opportunity to do it. And we should go and show the world our values, which Biden says all the time. We've got to show our values. And China has already threatened us if we pull out. But the Biden regime doesn't like this question. They don't want it, but they're going to have to face it because Pelosi is saying, you're going to listen to me. All right. So anyway, we'll have to see how that works out. And of course, you notice Pelosi doesn't say, we're hypocritical in Congress because we gave them most favored nation status. We're not revoking that because it makes all of us money. It helps the country. They hold our debt. You notice it's always the private sector that's wrong, never the government. And the government is almost never right. But tell us about it, Johnny. Yeah, thanks, bud. He always seems so happy. You ever notice that? He just like... This is COVID news, but it's also American Rescue Plan news, but they blamed it on COVID, so I put it here. As fears of worker shortages grow, White House economists say COVID-19 is to blame, not $300 unemployment benefits. No, it's the disease, even though, as I pointed out on our should-be award-winning show, that we were growing in January, February, and March. COVID was even a bigger problem then. Yeah, and also $300. You know, how do you trust people that can't even look at what makes sense. But this, if you want to travel to Europe, European Union to ease travel restrictions for vaccinated Americans. Go get your free vaccination, find a cheap flight and a good hotel, and go experience Europe. Many countries will give you good discounts. They want you back. They want you back. Of course, a lot of places here in the country want you back. Couldn't figure out which one to do for the little bit of, climate news that we have, but we have some environmental news, so we'll do a little bit of both.
Hi, I'm Woodsy Owl, and I want to thank you for doing a great job in trying to stop pollution, but we need more help. We can't do it all. So, help Woodsy spread the word. Never be a dirty bird. No matter where you go, come on, you can let some people know. Give a hoot, don't pollute. Never be a dirty bird. In the snow or on the sand, help keep America looking grand. Oh!
All right, that's all the time we have for Woodsy. And of course, I always feel compelled to have the picture of John Kerry whenever we talk about climate, because he is the U.S.'s envoy to the world on the subject. And so, John, we salute you. How does he stand so straight all the time? I don't know. All right, we have this because and again, this could fall under a lot of things, but see, sometimes all of these environmental rules that we have established to protect us hurt us. As Donald Trump was working on getting rid of a lot of these regulations, add federal permits to the list of U.S. crises, it should be. Federal permits. Well, what would that have to do with anything? Well, we will find out. The Biden administration's American Jobs Plan, the American Joke Plan, talks about a climate crisis and an affordable housing crisis in its attempt to address the country's infrastructure crisis. You got all those crises. But before it can make serious progress on any of those issues, it will need to address another crisis, federal permitting. Last week, President Joe Biden met with Republican senators to discuss building bipartisan support around infrastructure. His jobs plan proposes spending an estimated $2.3 trillion plus $400 billion in tax credits to be offset by $2.1 trillion in additional tax revenue. Seems a little short there, Joe. Objectives include modernizing 20,000 miles of road, 10,000 bridges, replacing lead drinking water lines, 100% national broadband coverage, and most ambitious of them all, overhauling the entire U.S. economy to achieve net zero greenhouse emissions by 2050. Ambitious indeed. Will ruin our lives, ladies and gentlemen, but that is another segment on another show. But the federal government stands in its own way, as it usually does, just like they did with the American Retirement Plan, otherwise known as the American Rescue Plan, by including the $300 a week unemployment bonus and trying to get people to go out to work. That's how come the president himself says, if you get offered a job, you have to take it, even though this isn't keeping you from taking it. Get in their way all the time because they're idealists. I mean, and understandably, things can happen. You don't think this through or that, but they're idealists, and they think the world just magically will dance to their little tune. But the federal government stands in its own way in accomplishing any of those goals. Many large infrastructure projects, especially linear projects such as utility lines that can cover hundreds of miles of right-of-way, are subject to a slew of federal, state, and local permits and other authorizations. Most prominent among those is the National Environmental Policy Act, known as NEPA. That's a new thing for most of us to know, NEPA, but it's very important. The average time to complete an environmental impact statement, the type of analysis required for most major infrastructure projects, is 4.5 years, with some reviews taking over 10 years. According to a 2020 report from the White House Council on Environmental Quality that examined submissions from 2010 to 2018, once approved, the most controversial projects, which are also often the largest, are subject to litigation from opponents searching for any vagaries in the law or process that they can exploit, delaying projects by an average of another 2 years. And this can happen also on existing products that you think, we're going to go in and fix it, because over time they notice different things that project caused, and then it's subject to it in court again. And because maybe when they built it, nobody knew there was a special green tree frog nearby, but now they know, and if you go in and repair or increase the size of a road or whatever, it could hurt that special green tree frog, and so now you've got a whole nother problem. Anyway, you see, it just never stops. Oil settles lower on reports of potential Iran nuclear deal. Sorry, got a little bit of my lock screen there. Yes, because I told you over and over. They're just dragging it out, waiting so it looks like it might not have happened and this and that. It was always going to happen. Both sides are just waiting it out. And this, of course, is going to bring down oil prices. Oil settled lower on Tuesday, tumbling from a 2-month high after media reports said the United States and Iran have made progress on reviving a deal restricting the OPEC countries' nuclear weapons development, which would boost crude supply. They haven't been able to trade, ladies and gentlemen, like they want to. Prices plunged on the reports that Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Mikhail Yulanov, said significant progress had been made, but losses stopped after he said on Twitter that negotiators need more time to finalize an agreement. After falling more than $2 a barrel, Brent crude settled down 75 cents or 1.1% at 68.71 a barrel by 1:19 p.m. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude settled down 78 cents or 1.2% to 65.49 cents a barrel. If the United States lifts sanctions on Iran, the country could boost oil shipments, adding to global supply. This could put a significant amount of crude oil on the market, which is why we are steadily drifting lower now, said Bob Yager, Director of Energy Futures at, what is that? Mizuho. I don't know. Mizuho. When I was scanning over it earlier, I missed that name. All right, we have the former president who, to me, is one of the worst presidents we ever had. Put him right up there in my lifetime with Carter and Obama. Actually, Obama was much more effective than Bush for what he wanted to do. Now, Biden tops them all, but anyway. Iran dangerous for world peace by targeting Israel, Bush says, warning two-state solution very difficult. And that's what the Biden regime keeps saying, because that's what they think will do. It's just not going to happen. Former President George W. Bush told Fox News on Wednesday that Iran is dangerous for stability in the Middle East and the world, while warning that a two-state solution is, to put it in Italy, it's going to be hard. It's a lot of hard work. Yeah. If you remember those days. While warning, okay, so we got all that. Same thing on both. Anyway. And lots to say about Iran, and yet, because they're bad, but not to the Biden regime. What are we doing on time? It's like the hour is going by so quick. And I've gotten nowhere. I have so many things we're going to have to stop, I guess. Yeah, this is... I guess I can give you the headline on this because it's kind of important.
Come on and rescue me. Come on, baby, and rescue me. Come on, baby, and rescue me.
All right, maybe we got time for it. It's really, I think it's very important. And since the show goes by what I think is important, because this is how they do it. This is why I pointed it out. We could just say it, but I think we should probably go in depth a little bit because this is how they do it. See, they say no, but then they open the door so it's yes. And you say, what are you talking about? HUD changes make housing vouchers easier for illegals to obtain. And it is still the law. It is not legal for someone who is not a citizen to obtain a HUD housing voucher. So how do they do this? And they plan this out. They planned this out. You can't tell me they didn't plan this out when you hear how they planned it out. The Department of Housing and Urban Development recently made changes to its emergency housing voucher program that make it easier for illegal migrants to receive free housing on the taxpayer's dime. And if you can get housing for a dime, you're better off than most people. The American Rescue Plan that President Biden signed in March awarded $5 billion for emergency housing vouchers to be distributed to people experiencing homelessness. And we pointed that out. Boy, that's a lot of money. Should be, I mean, okay, if you're going to do it, yeah, that should cover a lot, okay? To be distributed to people experiencing homelessness, victims of human trafficking, and survivors of domestic violence. The money is in addition to the more than $80 billion Congress spent for housing in response to COVID-19. So we have $85 billion to house the homeless. There shouldn't be a homeless person on the street unless that's where they want to be. The vouchers can be used to pay for any housing unit where the landlord will accept them. Recipients pay 30% of their income toward rent. And if you have no income, don't worry about it. And remainder is picked up by the government. Tenants who do not have an income need not pay anything, what I tell you. HUD earlier this month provided operating requirements. That's what they can do. These agencies go in and decide how they will manage it, oftentimes contrary to U.S. law because they don't care. Because you got to go to court to stop it. And by then, you know, it rarely happens on liberal items. Providing operating requirements for the allocation of approximately 70,000 emergency housing vouchers, which removed the requirement of providing proof of citizenship to join the program. It should be a birth certificate or a social security card, usually a social security card. Removed it. HUD is consequently waiving the requirement to obtain and verify Social Security number documentation and documentation evidencing eligible non-citizen status before admitting the family to the EHV program. Dominique Bloom, General Deputy Assistant Secretary for Public and Indian Housing. Shouldn't that be Native American? I mean, what's wrong? The letter says the requirement was waived due to the difficulty individuals and families experiencing homelessness may encounter in obtaining the documentation, and also points to the challenges presented by COVID-19, despite HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge announcing earlier this month that public housing facilities would be conducting mass vaccinations and screenings. Well, okay. Those who do not provide the required documentation during the initial eligibility determination must do so within 180 days to be eligible for continued assistance. An appeal can be filed, and assistance cannot be delayed, denied, reduced, or terminated on the basis of immigration status until the appeal process is completed. See what they're doing. They know what they're doing. It's not, oh, we didn't think of that. The adoption of this waiver does not authorize any ineligible family to receive assistance under these programs, according to Public Information HUD directed Fox Business to review. If a PHA, Public Housing Administration, determines that an ineligible family received assistance, the PHA must take steps to terminate that family from the program. But when the appeal process is completed and fraud is found, the damage will have been done, as an illegal immigrant will have been awarded this voucher over a deserving U.S. citizen. Currently, about 20% of eligible applicants are receiving vouchers. The flood of illegal immigrants entering the U.S. can make it even more difficult for U.S. citizens to reap the benefits of the program. And, more than 453,000 migrants illegally entered the United States via the southern border from February through April, according to the Southwest Land Border Encounters figure. U.S. Border Patrol expects that number to exceed 1 million before the end of the year. Now, I told you yesterday I had an article showing how many people have come over. It also included an estimate on those they didn't catch. And there are, and I could find one page, but not the other page, just sloppy keeping on my part. I have to clean out things every now and then or hit that storage limit, But they are estimating maybe as much as 1 million are getting in that they never see. They never, between all the smuggling and everything else. That's scary, ladies and gentlemen. That's a lot of people. The surge in illegal immigrants entering the country, which is being called a crisis by Republicans and a challenge by the Biden administration, began almost immediately after Inauguration Day, when the president signed an executive order pausing border wall construction. Yes, it did. And since they had also been telling everybody to come, Biden in a March interview said migrants looking to come to the U.S. should remain in their home country. Yes. And then, because of time, we can only throw in this, because we do have to get to the Israel problem, the Israel-Hamas problem, but by most liberals, only the Israel problem. Biden holds West Wing meeting with 6 illegal immigrants. We are home. They said Friday. Yeah, Friday. They had it Friday. President Biden invited a group. He won't go to the border, but he brings them in. President Biden Friday invited a group of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program recipients in the Oval Office Friday amid a push for immigration reform in Washington. Biden facing a mounting migrant crisis. Mounting? It's flooding, ladies and gentlemen. It's a tsunami. At the southern border, is working to extend the DACA program, an Obama era effort to protect people who were brought to the U.S. as children, which came under fire during the Trump administration. That's true and not true, as President Trump at first asked Congress to make it legal by law, and they wouldn't do it without throwing other things in. So what did he do? He then, okay, we're going to shut it down. And so they couldn't, not because they didn't have authority to do it, because it's just a presidential executive order, but because they went about it the wrong way. Yeah.
Never learn. You play with fire, you're gonna get burned.
Yes, and the Biden regime is finding that out to be true. I think we gave this to you yesterday, but still coming up. Democrats abandon push to delay Biden administration arms sale to Israel. But there are other problems. You may have seen this or not. Rashida Talib accuses Biden of taking orders from Netanyahu, urges U.S. to condemn Israel. She and Biden had a heated exchange on the tarmac in Michigan, where Biden was to speak at the Ford plant to promote the all-electric truck, the Lightning, the Ford F-150, and to promote electric vehicles in general, which there's some problems with that, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, and after the heated exchange, which I have some information on in just a few minutes, after that heated exchange, he went in and praised her and told everybody how wonderful she is. And she was raised or spent some time in her life in a Palestinian refugee camp, etc. And so she obviously has hard feelings. Well, today, President Biden got on the phone, got on the hotline. So many songs I think of once I get started. Got on the hotline and called Prime Minister Netanyahu again. And this is the readout they gave. President Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu today. The two leaders had a detailed discussion on the state of events in Gaza, Israel's progress in degrading the capabilities of Hamas and other terrorist elements, and ongoing diplomatic efforts by the regional governments and the United States. The president conveyed to the prime minister that he expected a significant de-escalation today on the path of a ceasefire. Because we know we rule Israel, right? I don't know why Israel puts up with us. They need us. That's why. We treat them like children. U.S. calls on Israel to de-escalate Gaza violence in push for ceasefire. So Biden, after that talk, and you say, well, yesterday you said that Netanyahu had things on Biden. I'll bring you what happened. I got it last night before the call today. This is going to show you a lot, so hang on. What are we doing with time? Okay, we're doing good. Joe Biden takes tougher line in phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu, but Israel and Hamas deny truce is imminent because Hamas doesn't want one either. All right, and I couldn't find a press conference if there was one today, so I'm wondering if they didn't want to talk today. Too much going on. Joe Biden has told Benjamin Netanyahu that he expects a significant de-escalation today on the path to a ceasefire between Israel and militants in Gaza in a notable toughening of the U.S. president's language on the conflict. The White House said that in a phone call on Wednesday, the two leaders had a detailed discussion on the state of events in Gaza, Israel's progress in degrading the capabilities of Hamas and other terrorist elements, and ongoing diplomatic efforts by the regional governments and the United States. We already read that. Just wanted to give you the official too. It added, the president conveyed to the prime minister that he expected a significant de-escalation today on the path to a ceasefire. But in a statement issued swiftly after the White House disclosure on the phone call, Netanyahu said he was determined to continue this operation until its objective is achieved to restore quiet and security to you, citizens of Israel. And he has to do that or he looks like the U.S.'s puppet. He added that he appreciated the support of our friend, U.S. President Joe Biden, for the state of Israel's right to self-defense. And of course, he's having to say that. Both sides in the conflict earlier denied that a truce was imminent. Israeli media speculated that a ceasefire could be enforced from early on Thursday. But Izzat al-Rashik, a senior Hamas figure, said there was no agreement. Israeli officials also rejected the suggested timing. Okay, go up. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Israel's Army radio reported that the Security Cabinet was expected to meet in the coming hours to discuss a possible end to the 9-day-old conflict in which more than 200,000, good grief, 200 Palestinians and 12 people in Israel have been killed. The number of missiles fired by both sides fell for a period on Wednesday morning, raising hopes of an imminent end to the conflict. No rockets were fired from Gaza for a period of several hours, but 3 mortar shells were later fired at the Karim Shalom border crossing as a consignment of humanitarian aid and medical equipment sent by Jordan was in transit. Israeli officials halted the shipment until further notice. Hamas is sending mortar shells. They want it to be bad. They want it to be a humanitarian crisis because then the world blames Israel. Israel officials said that it was the second time in 24 hours that Hamas had fired at shipments of humanitarian and medical aid entering Gaza. Again, they don't want it to come in because then they can tell everybody how horrible Israel is. In pre-dawn strikes, Israeli jets pounded what officials say is an extensive tunnel network under central Gaza used by Hamas to move fighters and weapons. Israeli military commanders say the tunnels have been central to the Hamas campaign, in which close to 3,500 rockets have been fired into Israel since the fighting began. I mean, this is not small, ladies and gentlemen. That's a lot. That's a lot. Israel said it had twice tried to kill the Hamas military commander, Mohammed Deif, but the elusive leader, who has previously evaded many other assassination attempts, escaped. The Israeli military also shelled an area across the country's northern border with Lebanon from where 4 rockets were fired. The Israel Defense Forces said artillery was striking a number of targets in Lebanese territory. On the diplomatic front, Egypt, Qatar, and the UN were attempting to mediate between the two sides, and France called for a UN Security Council resolution on the violence. In a joint statement, France, Egypt, and Jordan said they called on the parties to immediately agree on a ceasefire. They said they would work with UN and other partners to ensure humanitarian help for the population of Gaza. A French government spokesperson said very intense discussions were underway with the U.S. about a resolution. All you got to do is get Hamas to stop. Washington has repeatedly blocked efforts before the UN Security Council to draft joint statements calling for the fighting to end, saying it would not help diplomatic efforts to curtail the conflict. However, Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor FUI, he's the one making the decisions under the guidance of those that we don't know, has said Washington is engaged in quiet, intensive diplomacy. The UK government is fully committed to trying to bring about a ceasefire and reduce tensions in the region. The Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly told Parliament he condemned acts of terrorism by Hamas and other terrorist groups, saying there was no justification for targeting civilians. Israel had a legitimate right to self-defense, but it is vital that all actions are proportionate. But they don't take into consideration, if it wasn't for Israel's Iron Dome, their missile defense system, there would be a lot of Israelis hurt and or dead. That's a lot of rockets they're firing. But see, since they have that defense system, everybody says, oh, you shouldn't fight back. In a televised address, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, who's not there in Gaza, because Hamas controls Gaza, accused Israel of carrying out organized state terrorism and war crimes in Gaza. Palestinians will not hesitate to pursue those who commit such crimes in front of international courts, he said. Israel said an explosion that killed 8 members of a Palestinian family on the first day of fighting last week had been caused by a misfired rocket from Gaza, not an Israeli airstrike, which happens all the time. A senior military officer speaking anonymously said on Wednesday said an investigation had concluded that Israel did not strike the Bet Haman area where the family members were killed that night. The officer added that 1 in 5 rockets launched by militants landed inside Gaza. On Tuesday, an Israeli airstrike knocked out the only laboratory in Gaza that processes COVID tests. The Gaza Health Ministry said it had salvaged COVID vaccines and relocated test processing to another clinic. Well, because they were probably doing other things. You know. Yeah. Well, what? We got to finish the whole story here. Netanyahu brushes off Biden call for significant de-escalation in Gaza, says Israel determined to continue. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday brushed off President Biden's call for a significant de-escalation of the conflict. And this is really dumb for Biden to do. It makes him look helpless, as the press has accused him of being. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday brushed off President Biden's call for a significant de-escalation of the conflict in Gaza, saying he is determined to continue the operation against the terrorist organization Hamas, just as Biden is facing pressure from the progressive arm of his own party on the issue. Biden spoke to Netanyahu early Wednesday, and the White House said the two had a detailed discussion of the state of events in Gaza, Israel's progress and degrading capabilities, etc., etc. We know all of that. Yeah, the president conveyed to the prime minister he wanted a significant de-escalation. Boy, thinks highly of himself. You're going to do what I say, Netanyahu. Yeah. But after a visit to military headquarters hours later, Netanyahu said that he greatly appreciates the support of the American president, but said Israel will push ahead to return the calm and security to you, citizens of Israel. He added that he is determined to continue the operation until its aim is met. Israel has been responding to rocket attacks from Hamas with measures of its own, including airstrikes targeting key Hamas military complexes. The state is facing criticism for the reported 200 plus Palestinians killed, as well as strikes such as the one on an evacuated media building, although the Israel Defense Forces said it was being used by Hamas, with media outlets being used as a cover. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is their greatest crime. They blew up a media place. Russia warns Israel it won't tolerate more civilian casualties in Gaza conflict. So Russia's getting involved. Amid international pressure, Israel has refused to back down from the conflict with Hamas. Meanwhile, Russia has warned the Jewish state of engaging in further violence that costs civilian lives. Did you warn Hamas? No. Is the Biden regime calling Hamas and saying stop doing that? No, we can't do that. No, they're terrorists. We can't talk to them. All right, and that's all the time on that we have, even though we have some great video. We've got to get this in because we're way over time. And we actually did good on getting a lot of stuff, but I knew you needed some of our national stuff. And you say, well, you spend too much time on transgender. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I explained to you, if we don't get on top of this, we're not going to have a country. I'm telling you, that is one of the destabilizing forces in our country. You can believe me or not. I have some Godformation. I have one I can't give you yet. But it will be happening soon, and it'll be sad to hear. There are threats on the Israel policies. People are threatening to expose what they know. They are caught. So Talib, Talib yesterday confronted Biden, and I told you yesterday in our Godformation time that Netanyahu's told Biden, I'll tell the world what you've been doing in our elections, and we're almost there on finding out how much of your money went to weapons and all that. Okay? So the Biden regime, they don't want that to come out. But Talib yesterday on the tarmac said, you know what I know, and I'll tell. Yeah, based on the election. So which is Biden more afraid of? Well, certainly not what Israel can talk about, interfering in their stuff. Obama did it with impunity. Just I'm going to do what I want in your election. Spent U.S. money on it and everything. Nobody did anything. But Talib, again, threatened to expose things that the regime and others do not want to come out. So Biden had to talk tough to Netanyahu. And this is causing problems all the way up because they don't trust that woman. So they're caught between Israel exposing and others exposing. Deceit's just a hard way to live, you know? It's just pretty tough. June is a transition month. They will move away from Biden trying to be his own man of getting things passed by working with senators in Congress, namely the Republicans wanting bipartisanship, and move on to pushing things through. They have a September goal of completion so that they can launch new guidelines and laws on financing limits of freedom and new federal police powers. That doesn't sound good, does it? They intend to have a well-ordered society by the end of 2022. Welcome to Communist China, ladies and gentlemen, where instead of them just doing it to us, you voted it in. But not really, huh? Talib doesn't think you did, or she wouldn't have threatened that. But anyway, that's all we have today, and you weren't expecting this much show, and the time just flew by. Thanks for watching. Pray for the country. Pray for the country. Make your voice heard. Pray for Israel. Pray for the Palestinians. God bless America. We will see you tomorrow.